To the room. Perfect. We're recording. All right. Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the Writers Guild of Alberta's Controversy at Noon panel. My name is Matthew Stepanek, and I'll be your moderator for today. I'm looking between two screens randomly, so if I'm not making eye contact, it might just be weird. I feel like all of our presenters have done a much better job of that. So today's topic is one I feel very strongly about, and I'm happy to be leading this conversation with three wonderful people. The topic is saying no to AI. And I hope that by the end of this conversation that maybe we'll all be on the side of that. So in today's session, each of the panelists will get a chance to open with what they see as the major issues with the AI today. And then I'll be asking them some questions. And finally, I'll give an opportunity to everybody in the audience to ask some questions. So if anything comes up, please feel free to hold on to that and then, add it in the chat when it's the Q&A period. So I'm really excited to hear what our panelists have to say. So to begin, I'm just going to go to each of them and ask them to share their thoughts on AI and creative writing and the major issues that they see with it today. So Allison, if McBain, if you'd like to start us off with what you see as some of the major issues.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Matthew. There were rumblings a long time ago about artificial intelligence writing books, not just the most recent iteration of the technology today that we see. For example, the first book written by a computer program was back in 1984. So it's not a new type of thing. And that book was called The Policeman's Beard is Half Constructed, which is a very funny title.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know, 1984. Some of you might not have been alive back then. It received moderate acclaim as a novelty project, but of course, since then, there have been a lot of further experiments in AI written books, which has led us to today's landscape of ChatGPT, Google's Gemini, and other similar programs that literally write fiction and nonfiction for you. And if you go online, you can see there's a lot of articles all over the internet that have stuff like top 10 AI writing apps to help you create engaging content. It's all over the place now. But any creative pursuit up to until now has been a combination of human inspiration and monetization. And there are different levels of each. For example, the dream of many writers is to quit the 9 to 5 grind of the day job and write full time, right? Making enough to pay the bills and perhaps have a runaway bestseller is my dream, great dream to have, right? But to me, the essential spark that has always driven writers to create in the first place often has nothing to do with cold hard cash. Like most artistic pursuits, we do it because we love to do it. It's a part of our psyche, a part of our soul, and without it, there is a huge gap in who we are. On top of that, it's doing bad things for future generations. Teachers are sounding the alarm bell right now. There was a recent essay called AI and the Death of Student Writing by Lisa Lieberman, who is a writer and a college professor. And it speaks to the issue of the next generation losing the skills of creativity because they are becoming dependent on AI doing the work for them. And she's not the only teacher who has noticed this. Both college professors and grade 12 teachers and below have tried to find ways to combat students' use of AI in the creative and educational sphere. One solution has been to go back to the basic pen and paper method, where things have to be taken offline and off computer in order to guarantee students aren't cheating and having AI write their assignments for them. So, what does that mean about the future of human creativity? AI takes out individual human inspiration and makes the wild freedom of writing into a mass produced and stolen endeavor. Here's a controversial comparison, since we're part of the controversy at Noon panel. Just as settlers live on co opted land here in the Americas that was gained through whatever means necessary, AI books exist on top of co opted writing that was also taken by whatever means necessary, legal and illegal. Many times, the writers whose work has been taken haven't given permission for their writing to be used in the way these AI companies are using it. And the profits aren't going to the little guy. They're being sent up the ladder with the idea that AI will become a massively profitable venture, and the ones at the top will benefit financially, although so far that's not even the case. Technology has always outpaced the law, which is slow to catch up. But taking clearly protected and copyrighted works and using them to profit without reimbursing the authors who created them is a clear case of infringement to me. And that's a scenario where almost everyone loses. Frank Pascal, a law professor at Cornell and author of the book, The Black Box Society, The Secret Algorithms That Control Money and Information, recently said in an article, if this thing is allowed to sort of run away without regulation and without compensation to those whose work it's using, it basically is a new dark age. If uncompensated and uncontrolled expropriation of copyrighted works continues, many creatives are likely to be further demoralized and eventually defunded as AI unfairly outcompetes them or effectively drowns them out. And I totally agree with this assessment. I've spoken to a number of writers, especially new ones, who have been demoralized. And I've been asked, why should I even try to write if AI is going to write all our books for us? But I find that my opinion is keep writing, keep producing. AI right now is no match for human writers and the sheer beauty we can produce on the page. And there's hope right now too. So it's not all doom and gloom. There's been a much needed backlash against AI writing. So, and even though a lot of it is small and grassroots, it's still worthwhile. So many indie and small press publishers have added anti-AI restrictions to their guidelines, while at the same time, unfortunately, a lot of large corporations such as news agencies and streaming channels and so on have seemed to fully embrace AI. So it's the ultimate David and Goliath battle. Who will win this fight? Will it be the giant corporations or the small guys? I'm optimistic, but only time will tell.
Awesome. Incredible amount of research that you shared there, Allison, too. I was writing down, okay, I need to read that book and I need to read that article.
I can
Uh,
share the links later if anyone is interested.
yeah, oh,
They're great
definitely.
articles. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, well, thanks. And yeah, I just was really struck by especially the first essay that you mentioned, AI and the death of student writing, and how, that next generation is losing their skills for creativity. So that's, I think, a really good point to highlight. Christine, I'm gonna pass it over to you to also kind of share your thoughts on AI and creative writing and what you see as the major issues today.
Thank you. I have to admit to not having thought about it a whole lot before a few weeks ago on account of um, being one of those people where things happen in the background until I have to pay attention. But the first thing I thought when I got a controversy at noon, just say no to AI, was remembering back to South Junior High School in Rapid City, South Dakota, and little red buttons that we were getting that said, just say no, because Nancy Reagan was telling us all to just say no to drugs. And we know how that worked out. So I'm a little bit of a skeptic. Artificial intelligence is a revolutionary new technology, and we try to understand and whose trajectory we cannot predict. It's exciting and frightening at the same time, but it's hard to tell now if we're watching a horror movie unfold, if we're on a wild roller coaster ride that will eventually take us right back to where we started and leave us ready for another round. So I'm a skeptic by nature. If everyone panics, I try to stay calm. If everyone's staying calm, I kind of wonder where the monster is that nobody sees. And in creative writing, the tendency is to kind of panic in the face of AI, which makes a lot of sense. It's an undervalued, underpaid, extremely difficult field to work in. The idea of another technological threat to livelihood and self-expression is really and truly terrifying. And I think we're going to get into the issues about training AI and who wants AI products or not in a minute. But the thing that I keep coming back to and stumbling over or circling back to is the word creative, because AI can write in the sense that it has like learned a style or a formula for writing. It's playing like beer pong with an advantage when it comes to words, but it's not doing a whole lot more than that. So it can create the simulacrum of writing. It can look like it wrote something, but it's really just throwing characters onto a page or word units onto a page. It can offer up a text that looks a lot like what we think of as real text or human created text, but it can't check its own work. It can't evaluate its own work. It isn't actually intelligent. And I would challenge the idea that it's creative in the same way that humans can be. So we talk about things like the AI hallucinations, which are probably as close as AI will ever come to creativity. except when you or I are sitting down with a pen and paper or a computer and something weird comes out, we can go, oh, that was interesting and chase it, or oh, that was weird and leave it in a way that AI will never make a choice about. It will just always continue because it has no relationship to the work it creates. So I want to fully acknowledge all of the economic questions around AI and what AI is doing. I think they need to be separated from some of the ethical questions. And I personally, I'm kind of cautious and curious about what AI is doing and what it's going to do. I'm wondering if it's going to go more in the direction of like excessive clickbait or Proust.
um,
Thanks.
really sorry, I was just thinking on that. I was about to make a note of it, but then I left. Yeah, thank you for sharing that spot, Christine. And
Mhm.
it's kind of nice to have someone here too, where you know are learning more about AI more recently. Um, and yeah, I'm now going to turn it over to Travis to share his thoughts on AI and creative writing and the major issues that he notices.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All very good points have been made so far. I'm going to come at it from a couple of different angles. One of them being we have to remember why copyright was created. Copyright was originally created to incentivize creativity. If artists and authors and writers and creatives are out there creating a lot of work and putting their blood, sweat, and tears and time into it, and it's just disseminated without any kind of money or payment or any reimbursement, then the incentive to create disappears. And we have actually seen this because right now Canada has an issue with fair dealing in the educational sector, where there's been over $200 million lost in the past 10 years, over 10 years, from fair dealing being used by educational sectors. And what that has caused is a lot of the educational publishers to leave the industry. So if we're looking at a situation of copyright, and copyright is allowed to be passed on to works created by AI, then there's going to create a dearth of actual human writers, because what's the incentive to create and to write if you're not going to be reimbursed for it? The other part of that is right now there is actually an issue with copyright where it's not been debated, it's not been decided as to whether or not the AI does get a copyright. So there have been instances where there was a comic book that was written and illustrated by an AI, it was given copyright, and a little while later that copyright was taken away. So there's a chance that a human author that does use AI for part of their book could have the copyright for their book taken or part of the copyright removed from that book from them as well. So we have to remember why copyright exists and ensure that it's not being given to a machine that doesn't need any incentive to write. It just needs a prompt to be given to write as it goes forward. The other aspect of this is the moral issues and the voice issues. A lot of people that I've spoken to in the past when looking at AI and writing are taking a look at it from a perspective of, well, it's just words that are being put into a book. Or into a machine. I saw one person say, regards to the California lawsuits going on, well, it's the same thing as putting the dictionary into a machine. So what does it matter? What's the difference? The difference is it's more than just words. The difference is you're taking the author's voice and the author's tone and their style. Every author, just like a painter who has a unique brush stroke that you can identify by looking at the painting, they have a unique voice. They have a unique turn of phrase. They have a unique way of doing things. And an AI can then replicate that and take that and flood the market with impersonations or imposters or books that are very similar to or in the tone or voice of, which can flood the market and also destroy an author's credibility and their reputation and the market that they have for it. It is also dangerous in the sense of people like Fong Nguyen, who wrote the book Roundabout, an entire novel written without the use of the letter E. That's one of the most prolific letters that we use when we write. The letter E is there constantly. And he wrote an entire book without the use of the letter E, which is time consuming and difficult and a wonderful challenge to take on, and something that can be done in under 30 seconds by an AI. So it can take something that is a very unique and fun idea and absolutely destroy it really quickly as well. So these are things that we need to take a look at, because the other last aspect that I'll touch upon is when I'm coaching and training writers, one of the things I talk about are speed bumps, things that are going to knock your reader out of the story. If you use an AI to write part of your book, to write a poem, to write a song, to write a couple of chapters, to push past a certain barrier, your reader is now going to be reading your book and wondering, hey, that's a fantastic section. Did the author write that, or did the AI write that? And it's going to diminish who you are as an author and diminish your voice, because people are going to be second guessing what you've done and what the AI has done. So it creates speed bumps. And it also creates a situation where as was kind of alluded to by Christine and Allison earlier, AIs are not creating anything. They are recycling at best. They are taking words and books and stories that have already been created, and they're recycling them into new formats and new styles and new books, but it's all recycled words that are out there. So that's something that we do need to be careful of as well, is understanding that it's not fully creativity. It is more of a matter of recycling of words.
Excellent. Sorry, my dog was whining, so my partner just took the dog away. So Agatha will not be making an appearance today. Apologies. But thank you so much for Travis for sharing that, and I think has some really good separate ideas about yeah, what are the issues with AI. And yeah, I mean, I came to this already biased, and I will walk away. You know, I could walk away now saying like, "Yep, this was enough for me." But I do have some more um, questions for all of you as to like, you know, some other reasons that some other issues that I've noticed too with AI. So, kind of in terms of like the stolen work that several of you have brought up. You know, some writers and writer organizations, you know, have been speaking out against their writing being used to train the, you know, large language models, LLMs, and other sort of idea of like what AI actually is, without recognition and compensation. And as many know, you know, The Atlantic reported about a year ago on how OpenAI stole more than, I believe it was 183,000 ebooks from authors to train Chat GPT without their knowledge or consent. So this was kind of like when it was came out in the media, it was a surprise to all the authors who had no idea that, you know, their books were even had the potential of being stolen. And I'm curious, like I sort of handed out two questions to both of you, but maybe the one that I'm more interested to hear your thoughts on is, do you think it's possible for OpenAI to, you know, repair the damage they've done to authors, or, you know, especially like when there is this program ChatGPT that's basically been built off of stolen work, like does something like that deserve to exist? What should the consequences be? And I won't pick on anyone, but whoever wants to jump into idea of yeah, if there can be kind of any repair between writers and the tech companies that stole their work.
I'm willing to go in and like be first victim,
Sure.
which is
Hopefully this is painless.
the skeptics are used to this. It's okay.
Yeah.
Which is OpenAI didn't steal the work. Book 3, which is the data set that they use, was
Oh,
created by you know, a guy who was out there not working and pulled it all together, scraped, you know, found all of these sources and put them together and made it available with the idea of leveling the playing field for AI. And then OpenAI's, or you know, the folks for Chat GPT were like, hey, we'll use that too. So I have to take issue with the idea that OpenAI is the one at fault. And I'm also
okay.
wondering, why are we not looking at the responsibility of this person, Stephen Presser, who actually put together the data set? So it's kind of like, you know, if we offer a library, do we fault the person who checks out a lot of books, or should the library be careful what they put on the shelf? Because there's this conflict that I'm seeing between the idea of open source, let's share all the information, and folks who are going to make money off of it. This is not to say that it's okay to use work that's been copyrighted and belongs to authors, but I think there's a question. I think that the way the questions are formulated are pointing fingers sometimes at big businesses that should be maybe a little more widely spread. Again, also not to say that big businesses are behaving well, but it's just everything is much more nuanced. So that's what I'm going to leave on the table, and I'm going to crawl under the table.
Sure.
I'll jump in on that, or
Yeah.
unless you want to.
Oh no, go for it. Go for it.
Yeah. So I was going to say that it is the books 3 data set that was used for the dissemination of all the books for this. And that does come up with another issue that I speak with all the people that I work with. And is that if you use an AI to write part of your book and there's a copyright claim made against that because it is done by ill-gotten books, who is hit with the lawsuit? Who is hit with the strike? Is it the author that wrote the book? Is it the model, the Chat GPT, for example, that was used to put that book into it? Is it the company that runs ChatGPT, or is it the person who open sourced the material in the first place? So these are where laws and the legalities really need to be ironed out and filed through and sorted what's happening. But with regards to whether or not there can be any kind of amends made on this, that genie's already out of the bottle, and it's going to move very, very fast, and it is moving very fast. It's already quickly ahead of us, and it's just going to become light speed ahead of us very soon. And that's something that you can look at it from the monetary perspective of it and say, yes, authors, if they're compensated fairly, then that'll be fine. But there's some authors that are just morally object to having their work being used for this. They don't want AI involved. They don't want their work connected in anything. They don't want their voice taken or their voice stolen. And the other part of it too is now their words, their tone, their style can be used to produce something that they do not agree with, that they have moral objections to. And for someone who's very anti-smoking, all of a sudden a quote from one of their books can now be used for a smoking campaign, and they don't have any knowledge. So there's a lot of moral and ethical issues that tie in behind it as well. So I think there can be some kind of amends made through financial gains and transparency, and allowing people to choose to have their books removed or not used any further. I don't think we'll ever come to a zero sum on this again. I think that's already far gone.
Well, what this reminds me of, and I might be dating myself, is do you guys remember Napster and the whole
Yeah.
brouhaha with it when, because that was a new technology too. And, the streaming services and people downloaded music and it was copyright infringement. But the music industry managed to deal with it, managed to make sure that artists did get, compensated. There was a lot of legal battles with it. And I'm not 100% sure of all the details of what exactly happened. It was a long time ago and my memory's not as good. But I feel like this isn't the first time we've seen this battle of technology versus artists. And I feel like there are precedents in place where we could follow this with, it is a new technology, the AI and stealing authors' work. But again, there are precedents, I think, that have come before. So maybe that would be a good way to act as a guideline for how we can approach this new technology too.
That's actually a really good parallel to draw, Allison. And I'm curious if anyone has any thoughts or maybe can provide some background on this. Like, I would assume that we haven't seen a lawsuit like this yet because it's small publishing companies versus, larger tech corporations. And like with Napster, I think it was, a really powerful music industry versus one person. But I don't know if anyone agrees or disagrees with that, or kind of maybe like, I guess, yeah, what's going on in the background legally right now, if
Well, I
anyone.
can I can say in the background legally, there are a lot of lawsuits that are being fought about this right now
Oh,
in
okay.
Canada and North America. There's a large one currently happening in California, and unfortunately, they seem to be a lot of it was thrown out because the judge in this particular case is looking at it and saying, well, they're not putting in the book and spitting out an exact replica of the book, so therefore it's not copyright infringement. They're also making a claim for fair use and educational fair use, because these now, for those of you that may not know, educational fair use means that if it's something is being used for education, in this Canada it's fair dealing, and the United States it's fair use. And what this clause means is that universities, schools can use books under certain circumstances without having to pay for them. And they're making this argument in the States saying that this is a fair use thing because we're using the books to train and educate the AI model and move forward with it. And that's actually gaining some form of traction. And here in Canada, our fair dealing laws are a lot less strict than the fair use laws in the United States. So if that were to come to Canada and that argument were to be fought here, there'd be great risk put on the industry. And that does come to a matter of if the fair use or fair dealing exception is included and accepted, then that's where we'll fall into the dearth of authors that I was talking about earlier. So there are parallels. It does tie in as well. I agree with that. But I think in this sense too, it goes into a much deeper, because it's not just disseminating the works, it's now actually creating new content with the work that has been disseminated out there already.
Awesome. I appreciate learning too while I'm here. Thanks, Travis. I realize I'm kind of jumping to easier question that maybe I should have started with. But I wanted to ask, like, have any of you, heard from readers who want to read books written with AI? Do you know maybe even authors who are interested in using it, and maybe some of like where that interest lies, or like what they tell you when they say they either want to read something written by AI or write something with AI?
Uh, I haven't heard from any readers who particularly have said they would love to see AI books take over, or read AI books. There are authors who are using it selectively. That I know, for example, they're using it to write their back cover copy, so they'll plug in their book to an AI program and it will, pump out like 2 to 3 paragraphs of summary of what their book is about. They're also using it on their websites to write copy and marketing copy, for example, or write blog posts. So they're not necessarily using it for the main meat of their writing, but they are using it as a sort of assisted tool to help them um, compose the sort of marketing material around their book.
Interesting.
Um, for that, I can say that I do work with a bunch of different authors, and some are using it exactly as Allison has said, for marketing, for research, for trying to work through a certain struggle or part. One person I spoke to, they're not a songwriter. They wanted a song in their book, so they wanted to use it. There's an interesting case, excuse me, that just happened in Japan, where there's a female author who won a prestigious award in Japan, and then came out and said that a chunk or portion of the book was written by AI
Right. Yeah.
after she won the award. And there was some kind of disruption. She kept the award, but there was some kind of disruption around it. And so there were some concerns. To quote Stephen King, when he was asked about ebooks versus paperbacks, where he said, I think the ebook is going to do to paperbacks what the escalators did to stairs. And I think that's going to be the same kind of situation with this, where we'll see people that want to take in AI generated books. We'll see people that want to take in only human generated books. And we'll see people that want to have a combination of both, to see how the marriage of tech and humanity can kind of mix in moving forward. So I think this is something that we're going to see moving forward. If regulated properly and strongly enough, I believe there can be a playing field for both. But we have to remember the stuff that we see out there now is very early stages, and it's only going to get stronger and better as it evolves, or not evolves, but grows. So I think that there are some authors that are interested in it, and I know there are some readers that are interested in seeing. I think right now it's kind of a morbid curiosity to see what a machine is going to come out with.
Cool. Christine, did you have something to add?
I mean, I have two things I want to do. One, my thought, another response. One is, as a reader, I'm totally curious about what AI is producing, on account of the claims and the fears can only be confirmed or blown away by what I actually see. So I'm curious as to what AI is producing, in the same way I was curious about like Patricia Lockwood's No One is Talking About This,
Oh,
or
yeah.
S by J.J. Abrams, or The Building Stories Box by Chris Ware. I've always been really curious about new forms of putting the written word out there, because ever since I was a kid, there have been so many threats to the book in its form, the way it was in the libraries in the 1950s, that it's been interesting to see how it changes and how the book continues to remain pretty tough as a thing. But I've gone out looking. I've seen there's a story, Ghost, that was published in The Believer, where a woman used AI to help her write the story. And what's interesting is she writes about how AI fails her, but also how it shows her something new. And then just today on Instagram, which obviously we all spend lots of research time on, I found this guy who's writing country songs with AI, and he is hilarious. Like it's unstoppably funny, but it's the human that makes it funny. The songs on their own would just be 100% cringy, but the human being interacting with them is what makes them funny. So there's that part of it. And the second thing is that I'm really struck by the irony that the people who are using AI are the writers. Like the writers are the ones who are using AI to help make their own job easier. And then the writers are also the ones who are scared of AI. And is it because they realize what the potential is? Is it because they, I don't know, but in my experience too, people I've been talking to who are using AI are mostly people who are writing or coding who can now get a little bit of code done and it's easier. Um, so yeah, it's a little bit of like tearing down the tool you want to use or wanting to be there's a big question mark there for me.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point to bring up. Thanks, Christine. Um, so we've kind of touched on, especially through all of your openings, a lot of the artistic consequences for AI and the issues that arise from there. But since this is a general, saying no to AI panel, one thing that I wanted to bring up that the news media is reporting on more recently is the environmental consequences to AI. So I just have this quote from a Jacobin article that was released this week that just shared each time you search for something like how many rocks should I eat? And Google's AI snapshot tells you at least one small rock per day. You're consuming approximately 3 watts of electricity, according to Alex DeVry, the founder of Digiconomist, a research company exploring the unintended consequences of digital trends. That's 10 times the power consumption of a traditional Google search and roughly equivalent to the amount of power used when talking for an hour on a home phone. In addition to power, these facilities suck up substantial amounts of water to cool their servers and are often located in places where land is cheap, like deserts. Only a few operators report their water usage, even though a fifth of servers draw water from moderately to highly stressed watersheds. One paper estimates that globally, the demand for water for data centers could be half that of the United Kingdom within the next several years. Um, so I'm always incredibly troubled to read that. I feel like when Christine, talks about the fears and why we're kind of panicking about AI, this directly ties into the climate change panic that I experience on a daily basis. And so I'm kind of curious, do you think if more artists, outside of this argument of are we or are we not stealing someone's work or reproducing something less creative, do you think if artists were aware of the environmental consequences every time they used AI, do you think they would still use it? Or, how do we compensate for that? Or how do I'm curious, what all of your thoughts were when you kind of heard and read about, the water usage and the energy uses that goes into every AI search.
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one. And that's something that I wasn't very familiar with until this article was shared with me, looking into the energy and the power sources and water sources that were being used for it. More and more, it seems like the new technologies and advancements we're making are driving us back into the Stone Age with coal-fired power plants and
Yeah.
things like that. Like, speaking of social media, there was a meme I saw where someone said, when we heard of AI, I anticipated the AI, doing the menial tasks and the labor tasks and humans doing the art and the creativity, not the reverse of that. But whether or not artists and creators will stop using it, that's kind of hard to say. I think there's definitely a perception that the creatives are kind of more liberal leaning, more open to climate change and those kind of situations and scenarios, and more willing to kind of take a step back from anything that can cause that kind of issue. So I think in one sense, yes, we will have some people that will stop and kind of reconsider, especially if they're using it on a lower level, they'll kind of redress how they're doing their research. But for the controversial part of this, I think there are actually there's artists and creatives out there that don't care. If you're actively going and knowingly stealing someone else's work and putting it out there and promoting it as your own, then I don't know if there's going to be that level of moral fortitude to be able to step back and say, oh, well, I'm impacting the environment. So you're already impacting other people. You're already impacting the industry. You're already taking money out of other people's pockets. Is the fact that it's drawing water from a strained watershed or firing up some more coal-fired power plants going to be enough to make you step back and say, I'm not using it? So I would say yes, that to some, and I think there's a subsect that will, I don't care so long as I'm getting done what I need to get done.
Yeah, I'm sure Taylor Swift, for instance, is aware of the CO2 that she produces every time she flies her private jet. But I mean, maybe we could also argue if Taylor Swift is an artist. I wouldn't give her the poet title. Sorry, I didn't mean to go down on Taylor Swift.
So this is the controversy that's coming
Well,
up.
you pissed off Swifties everywhere.
I am like, if there's Swifties in the chat, you can, rightfully attack me. But I mean, there's someone who I wouldn't be surprised if we found out that all of her really catchy songs were written by AI. But anyways, sorry. Allison, I think maybe you wanted to chat next.
Again, I might want to interrupt you to save you from yourself.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm gonna get doxxed online.
It's getting hot in here.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know,
don't mess with the Swifties.
I'm the problem. It's me. It's okay.
Yeah, I agree that until I heard these exact statistics, I knew it was taking up more power because it's been alluded to in various articles, and that's one thing that is, straining the infrastructure. But I didn't know the exact numbers or the exact destructive potential of it. And I think actually a lot of people, because it's a very new technology, don't know the cost of it. So I think, well, I agree with you, Travis, that, will 100% of people be affected by this news? Absolutely not. I could compare it to sort of like smoking. So back when, go back decades, smoking was cool. Everyone did it, everyone thought it was just a normal everyday part, of your day, right? So, but then information started coming out and it started getting publicized about how bad it was, and it started getting shamed. And a lot of people quit smoking or didn't take it up anymore. And it really cut back on those numbers. So I think there could be a great correlation. The more people who know the cost of this and what it's doing, not just to writers and creativity, but also what it's doing to the environment, there will be people who will say no, a lot more people, I think.
Christine, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'm going to crawl out from under the table. Well, I think the article is like a definite strong argument in support of Alberta's ban on cell phones in the schools that is going to happen next year, because we obviously should not let junior high kids have access to AI. Yeah. They know how many rocks they should eat every day. The answer is I also think that, when we look at art, you mentioned the Eras Tour, but I was also thinking of like the Olympics are coming. There's going to be an opening ceremony, Krista wrapping buildings, and the Marvel movies and the World Cup that happened. As much as anyone is ever aware of environmental damage, it hasn't stopped people from doing things. And the first one on my list was Burning Man. I can't even imagine the kind of environmental damage that causes. I don't think it's going to get in folks' way. And I think anybody who was already going to consider that is probably paying attention, which is very doomsday of me, but that's pretty much where I think that goes.
I think that kind of ties into the saying of, for those that understand, no explanation is needed. For those that don't understand or don't care, no explanation will do.
Yeah.
And this is the reason that I don't sleep that well at night some days is, yeah. I mean, this will probably lead into a later conversation that we have, but I kind of wanted to touch on like one other point that I think Travis also mentioned about the, coal-fired energy, because the Washington Post was saying that AI is exhausting the power grid, and it's leading to coal energy being fired to, fill in the absence. And where like the article talks to a couple tech companies that are claiming to be working on creative alternative energy sources, some fusion power. And I admit that I am, as much as I try to understand physics, I don't. But I'm just kind of wondering, like there's not a lot of evidence that they'll be able to meet the energy demand soon enough. So do any of you maybe even believe that AI is sustainable, or do you think it might disappear in a couple years, just like NFT art did? All those are, if anyone on the call doesn't know that their NFT art is worthless now, I'm sorry that this is the first place that you're learning it. I hope your chimps were never stolen. But yeah, I'm curious, maybe does this feel like more like of a fad if we can't actually create a sustainable way to power it?
I think this comes to, do you want to go ahead, Christine?
No, I would like to hear what you have to say.
I personally am looking forward to the future where we are all sweeping the coal dust off the streets and buildings while wearing rags over our mouth, watching the machines hover past us, singing songs. It's going to be a fantastic future. There's an aspect of this that I think we're not taking into consideration, and is that it is machine learning that we're doing, that we're using, and it's already being used for pharmaceuticals, for biotech companies, all these other things. And so it's not just the creative industry that's using it. So the other industries that are using it are going to keep it alive. I think the part that we're looking at is there's going to come a point where we're no longer going to need to feed books into these machines anymore. Apparently, I saw a thing, I haven't read it fully, but someone said apparently by the year 2036, they expect AIs to have scraped every bit of learnable language off of the internet.
Oh, wow.
But to that end, we're no longer going to have to feed books into these machines because they're going to start training themselves. They're going to be at a high enough level to be able to train themselves. And there's going to come a point where all people need to do is say, how do I create an energy source to maintain the AI systems? And the AIs are going to at least point them in the right direction. Or how do I defeat Canada's regulatory laws around AI use? And the AI is going to tell people how to defeat the laws to go around it. So this is very early stages, and I think this is something that's going to be around. It might go through some hiccups, but I think it's going to be around for the long haul. And I think it's going to get to a point where if it's not running entirely on its own, because we have to remember it's not actually artificial intelligence, it's very high level machine coding and algorithms. But I think once those algorithms get to a certain level, then it's going to take on a life of its own and be able to ensure its own survival through human assistance.
Thank you, Travis.
Yeah, it's sort of Pandora's box. We've opened it. It's here. I don't think it's going to go away. It will get better. We're in the early stages of it. So even for things like writing, for example, I publish a small press and we do get AI submissions and they are utterly horrible. Because the one thing that I haven't seen from AI writing is they get the emotions wrong, usually how humans react to certain situations. So, for example, we'll have it's supposed to be a very emotional scene, someone dies, and the reaction of the person is to laugh. And while if you didn't like that person, that's a very valid reaction. If you're trying to create a very sad scene, that doesn't work. Or, for example, dialogue. Dialogue is very wooden. People do not speak in complete and proper sentences. We trail off, we have incomplete sentences. So these are two examples of how AI is not good yet, but the companies are continuing to train it. Or one thing that I read recently, and I don't know how accurate or true it is that one company, and I apologize, I don't have the exact statistics or who it was using YouTube videos, again, without the permission of the creators, to improve the AI dialogue, because that is one thing that people have noticed, that the dialogue is wooden. So, and again, this is another brouhaha. There's probably going to be a lawsuit in the works. Who knows? YouTube is a big company. But they're continually trying to find ways to outpace the laws and make their product better. So right now they're winning the race. Unfortunately, laws take a long time to catch up to it. So I don't think we can put this back. They will continue to find ways. And as Travis suggested, maybe they will find a way to make it sustainable. That's probably around the corner.
Thanks, Allison. Christine, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Trying very hard to be witty and it's not working.
You've gotten plenty of wit points for me.
Yeah, but thank you.
Yeah.
Am I afraid of what's going to happen? No. Do I think it's going to solve the energy problem? No. The AI can't want to solve the energy problem, so that's where we're always going to have to be there, unless it's, I don't know, some kind of self-preserving. Oh God, now I might be terrified. I think it's like a lot of things, I was in the thrift shop with my kids and I saw an electric can opener. And I was like, oh yeah, remember when these were on everybody's counter and we had electric can openers and now we just like do it by hand and it's much better. It feels like it might be kind of like the electric can opener. Like it seemed like such a good idea and a shortcut. And then we were like, wow, that is a massive piece of junk on my counter to do a thing I can do in 30 seconds on my own. Um, so I wonder, if this is just the 80s for AI and that eventually we kind of go, all right, well, that was interesting, but in its proper place. Um, it doesn't participate in society the way we thought it was going to. And it's not contributing in a way that we value it. And so, you know, we'll be okay. This is where basically I'm on a part of curiosity and waiting. I have definitely a brain that can stay up at night and be terrified of everything that's coming. And I had to learn to make it shut up since I had children. They were keeping me up, and now I have to be scared for their future too. Um, so in the end, there's a pragmatic part of me that says we just have to do the best we can with it. Stay aware of what's going on and make sure that in our lives we make the choices we can to keep ourselves safe and support the causes that are going to keep other people safe too.
Nice. I like that. So I've got one last kind of question that I'll throw out to the group, and we may have time for some of the stuff that's been happening in the chat. We'll see what happens. Um, but now I've got this image stuck in my head that Travis painted for us of this like Dickens meets Mad Max future. And I'm curious if anyone would like to share, what do you wish governments were doing in regards to AI? Or, do you think that governments can actually do anything? And maybe it's a different kind of type of collective action that artists need to be taking.
So I actually was on Parliament Hill recently having high-level meetings with MPs, with the leaders of the other industry, publishing and writers unions across Canada. I was representing authors. And we had some very key and simple asks of the government. The three main points that we had were to ensure the Copyright Act provides fair protection of the moral rights of authors and the copyright of authors and publishers, to ensure that they do not introduce a new copyright exemption or a compulsory license regime for text and data mining. So we don't want any compulsory fair dealing, fair use, or any kind of exceptions or compulsory, you have to be a part of this. It has to be a fair, free, open market where authors and creatives can negotiate what they're looking for and say yes or no as to whether or not they want to be a part of it. And to ensure that in Canada, it's Bill C-27 includes reasonable provisions on transparency, similar to those introduced in the European Union, and that it obliges AI developers to comply with Canadian copyright law when they train and deploy their products. So the Canadian government recently they put out a questionnaire and had a bunch of people answer this questionnaire. And just a couple of days ago, they made all the results public. So Canadian Authors Association were listed in there as well for what our take on this AI as well. My main thing is those 3 points, and the government has to understand that this isn't like the fair dealing exception. We don't have the opportunity to get this wrong. As I said, it's going to go faster and faster away from us. So we can't be here 10 years from now saying, oh, that went off the rails and had some unintended consequences. How do we fix this? We need to get it right first as much as possible, because if we don't, it's going to steamroll away from us and we're not going to be able to even remotely gain a grasp of what we're doing again. So authors, creatives, writers out there, you need to be paying attention. You need to be watching Bill C-27, watching what the government is doing, and writing letters, contacting your members of parliament, doing whatever you can to ensure that they realize that the Goliaths that are making money or cash hand over AI generated fist don't completely quash all of our creatives, because if they kill the creatives, they're also killing their garden that they're plucking information from. If no one's creating new information, there's nothing else for them to be able to generate things off of.
Thanks, Travis. Christine or Allison, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I like, what if we just reverse it? What if we say it's like, y'all have already taken the work. You're using it. Okay, fine. Here's what we're going to do. You're now responsible for a universal minimum salary for artists and creatives.
Hey,
Use it all you want. but now you need to pay them. So all the money that's been going into funding arts, we're just going to put it on Meta and we're going to ask them to take care of that. And then we take care of what we need. Because the like there's a livelihood threat and there's a creativity threat. And we kind of need to separate those things. I don't think creativity is necessarily threatened. The livelihood is. So, if that's the thing we need to take care of, okay, fine. You've used all of this stuff. Now pay for it, please. And what if we just go the other way around and just say, there you go, you're welcome. Here's your bill.
Can we ask for better funding?
Yeah, and
Or can we get a rise in this situation?
While you're at the negotiating table, get all you can get.
I would love that. Like that's the kind of big picture, big dream thinking that, just force all the corporations that have already profited off of our labor to pay for everything.
I mean,
can someone pass this up the government chain? Yeah.
We have more meetings coming, so we'll see.
Okay, yeah.
You let them know. I was like, I got an idea.
I mean, Meta barely wanted to. Actually, I can't remember, but I think we still can't share news articles or anything on Meta, so they're still not. I think Google agreed to pay, but I don't think Meta or Facebook is paying for any of that yet. So they might be a little bit disagreeable, Christine, but we just need to try harder. Does anyone have any blackmail on Zuckerberg that we could share? Feel free to drop it.
I'm sure he's never done a blackmailable thing in his life.
Yeah.
Can you blackmail a robot?
If you've seen The Social Network, it's like, okay, yeah, I think we already know the worst of him. Allison, I don't want to cut you off or take up space. Did you want to add anything to that?
Sorry, my internet connection is unstable, so I kept on freezing. So
no.
I missed half of your answers, but ditto, agree.
Ditto.
I'll just go with that.
We were like, send the bill to Allison.
Yeah.
No, never mind.
Okay, I'm gonna we have a couple questions in the chat that I'll read out. I've got one from Ruth, who's asking, or saying at least at the start, students and new writers often start their creative writing careers in editing and the labor end of writing. It sounds like these are the positions that will be filled, taken by AI. How might this affect the career trajectories for new writers? What kind of jobs do you think there'll be for them? It's really interesting because that was also a job that I started with.
And I think AI would be a terrible editor.
Yeah.
I mean, there are editing programs like Grammarly that do a pretty good job of covering the basics, I would say. They're less useful for nuance. They're definitely not. It's more like copy editing, punctuation, that kind of thing. It's much harder to have them, edit like developmental editing, deep copy edits, anything that requires like finesse. So I think there will definitely still be editors. Like, for example, one project that I'm doing right now is an author came to me, had run their book through Grammarly, and it was full of errors still. So I'm re-editing that book after it's run through Grammarly. So I think there won't be editing or editors' jobs under threat as soon as some people might think. I think that is one that is more secure. Another job, though, that might be under threat, and I say this from personal experience because it's something I do. I'm a ghostwriter, in addition to being an editor. So ghostwriting jobs will probably dry up a lot faster than editing jobs, because if you can get a program to, write in a certain style of an author with the author's permission, through the publisher, through the author, you might not need a ghostwriter anymore, because that manuscript, even if it has errors, will be edited and be prior to publication. So that might be a job that's under threat.
So we need all of the editors across Canada to agree to raise our rates on any books that are AI generated.
Yes.
To make sure that we have something, because I agree, the nuance is missing. Even, sometimes you trail off a sentence, you cut off, you put in grammatical mistakes, errors on purpose, and the machine's not going to pick that up. But on that note of Grammarly, something that came up as well, just as a point of risk, is students are being potentially banned or kicked out of school in universities and colleges and accused of cheating because they're using programs like Grammarly to copy edit their work. And they're using AI. So when it's being run through the school's AI filters, it's being flagged as being partially or part written by an AI because it was just edited through these programs. So more and more, the programs that we use to write, we have to be careful with how we use them because that can cause future issues for us.
Yeah. I just want to add to that too, is like I have a freelancer friend who is normally asked to write articles and recently has been asked by the same company to edit articles that were written by AI. And they've made a clear choice to not accept that kind of work, just because it, it naturally affects like, okay, we were going to get you to write it, but now we're going to pay you less to edit this article that someone else wrote or someone else is in a computer. So I just want to maybe throw that out to the crowd too, where it's like if artists unionize and decide not to take this work or increase our rates to like 3 or 5 times what it would be to edit the I think that's not a bad idea. I want to throw in this last question here from Moira earlier in the chat. I don't know, Travis, you might be the best one to speak to this, but they just have a note. My books are copyrighted. However, does it make a difference that in Canada, books do not need to be copyrighted? I have put these words at the very bottom of the cover page of my second book, written by a real live human. So I think you can maybe say that I think copyright is still affected the same way in Canada, even if we say it, right? Sorry.
So copyright is still, we still need to have a copyright, and like you don't have to have a copyright in Canada, but a copyright is so important if you want to protect your works.
Right.
From moving forward, some people choose not to file a copyright on it, and that's fine. Writing by an actual human or written by an actual human is something that's good to put in there. What I work with all my clients, I won't produce or publish anything that is written by an AI or partially written by an AI. But what I recommend anyone that is using it is to put a catalog in the back of saying, page 32, paragraphs 5 through 7 were written by an AI. So you take that ambiguity out of what was written by the author and what was written by an AI, and potentially protect yourself for any copyright claims down the road. You can come out and say, well, this section that someone is specifically claiming I stated was written by an AI, and so go talk to them, not me. But again, the legal framework on that ground is still shifting. So I would say get the copyrights if you can, and putting in something that it's purely by a human can help you. But we have to remember we're up against very deep pockets, so it can be hard to fight back against that.
Yeah. Thanks, Travis. Well, we're 1 minute to noon to 1 p.m. Don't fact check me live. So I think I'll kind of end this one and just say thank you to Christine, Travis, and Allison for their incredible thoughts today. Had a lot of fun with you and, kind of wading into this doom and gloom. And thank you to everyone who joined us today for this WGA panel and, also got to listen to me rant about AI. I'm just going to say at the end, please say no to AI and tell your artist friends to say no too, whether you got that or not. But, for the sake of the art and the planet. And also, I'll just make an unofficial record that Skylar has requested that the next controversy at noon be about Taylor Swift. So I look forward to being asked to moderate that one.
Or not.
Yeah, exactly. Love it. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.